Hello and welcome to Between Two Peers, a live stream show where the hosts invite a guest from around the known world to answer your pressing questions about life, the universe, and everything. Please feel free to submit your questions on YouTube, by the way, and we will do our best to answer them. So this week is sponsored by coffee. Definitely coffee. Coffee gives you the power to make questionable decisions faster. And if anyone knows anything about being fast, it's definitely our guest this week. So my name is Tulia Alori. I am a host. I'm a Laurel from the West Kingdom. I'm also your host. I've been in the SCA for 27 years, and I've been a Laurel since 2012. And I really don't think I'm showing any sign of stopping anytime soon. So I'm just hanging in by the skin of my teeth right now until we can get back together and hang out. So with that, I'm going to pass this over to my fabulous co-host, Count Seto, who will do his introduction. And I should explain, yes, we are missing a Danger Muppet today. She had some things come up this week, and so we're gonna she needed to take the time off, and we can roll right with that. So everything's okay. Just please don't start text bombing her. We had a little bit of that earlier today, and would just like everyone to know she's fine. There's nothing wrong, nothing the matter. She doesn't need, a lot of people worrying about her right now. So she just couldn't make it tonight. Anyway, Seto, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I am Count Seto Gashuko of the Mid-Realm. I am honored to be here and stand in for Danger Muppet. But of course, you can't really replace her. But I am from the Middle Kingdom. I've been at Society for about 11 years. I've had such a great time there. I first started when I ran out of money for martial arts, and I was like, the SCA is free, so that'll be great, sucker. And now I'm here, not gonna stop. And now I'm being a co-host for this wonderful show, and I hope you guys enjoy today. So tonight, our guest is Duke Marc de Arundel. Marc, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Thanks for having me. My name's Marc de Arundel. I'm a knight and a duke out of the West Kingdom. I've been in the SCA for about 20 years. And also show no sign of stopping. I'm actually excited, although it's gone on longer than I expected. This reign, I've been lucky enough to be Queen's Artisan, which is something I never thought I'd be able to experience in the SCA, as I'm a very fight-focused person, so I've been really enjoying that part, a new way to serve and give back. So that's kind of cool.
Super cool. Very awesome. So, as you guys all may know, our drinking game, when our host or guest or non-SCA name is referred to someone in the show, you take a drink. This one, once again, by coffee. So we'll see how amped up we get throughout the show. When someone's pet appears on the screen, you missed one, but maybe it'll happen again. Also, when someone calls soapbox for having a soapbox or some kind of going on that way, and someone mentions Sprite sprinkles or toe beans. So keep that lookout. And guest rule of the episode.
I think the guest rule is going to have to be every time somebody mentions COVID, we take a drink, because something good has to come out of it.
That's true.
Perfect.
I like it.
All right. So, shall we get into the questions?
Absolutely.
So this first spate of questions are directly for you, Marc. We will not answer them, although I have to restrain myself from contributing often. I do a very good job tonight and not do that. But directly for you, how did you find the SCA?
Oh, okay. We were chatting about this before the show. So I'm a lifelong martial artist. I started when I was 7 and was always training. And I was fencing in college. And when I was fencing, one of my teachers was like, "Oh, you fence, I do this." And he pulled out this medieval helmet. And I lost my mind. I was like, what? And he actually was a blunt steel fighter. So I actually got into Ren Fair and blunt steel first. And when our group closed down, my friend said, well, there's this other group. It's not exactly the same, but at least we get to still swing swords and have a good time. So I showed up to my first SCA practice and got my ass absolutely kicked. Where I came from, everybody had two-handed swords. I'd never really dealt with shields before. So the first time somebody slammed a shield into me and started wrapping me, I'm like, what the hell is that? But it was a new challenge. And so I got really excited for it. And for a long time, I was very fringy. I treated it like martial arts. So I went to practice and then I went home. And it took a little while to start really developing those friendships and going to events. And then once I really got engrossed in the chivalric culture that surrounded the fighting, there was no going back. I was completely hooked. And I went completely native, 100%.
It get you. They get you.
Very cool. So how do you stay engaged in the SCA during the pandemic, and what have you learned?
I think I'm really lucky because I have students that I feel a great sense of responsibility for. So when the pandemic first happened and the HEMA club that I run and the local SCA practices closed down, I made a commitment to do some weekly videos, training videos, just to make sure that people would have content to work on. And that took on a life of its own. And so now I have this Backyard Basics where I put out videos every week. And I just put out week 39, which is a little mind-boggling.
They're great. You should check them out if you haven't. We'll make sure you check them out.
And of course, I do Pell work every day. And because I had students all over the world already, I had gotten used to doing some distance training. So we would, before the pandemic, we would film our practices and send them back and forth to each other and critique. And so I've been able to still do that, where I've been able to watch videos of people fighting, or I've sent videos out and then we talk back and forth. So it's not the same, but I do have weekly interactions with many of the people that I fight with, and that's been really helpful. I got very big into the Facebook groups initially, so I jumped right into Known World Fighter Practice and Known World Virtual Classroom, and I spend a lot of time on those. So I'm more in front of my computer than I would really like, but it is keeping me engaged with the community and my fighting friends, which I think has been helpful. And then because I'm a little OCD, my home gym keeps sprouting new equipment. I don't know how it magically shows up. So I'm working out even more than I was before the closure, because it's not fighting, but it's something I can do to get a little bit of those demons out.
Just a little bit. You're like, this is close.
Yeah. Mark is one of the most dedicated, like, fitnessy health people I've ever met. And every day when I start my day, I always think like, God, I would just be like, oh geez. I try though. You're in my mind all the time. Trying to be the good angel on my shoulder, you know.
It is tough when we're usually getting to fight 2 and 3 times a week, because you have to balance strength and conditioning work with skill work. Because if you're too fried, you can't train skills very well. But because so much of my skill work is shut off, I can just throw myself into the sandbag and the weights and the Tabatas and that kind of stuff. So hopefully when we come back, my conditioning at least will be better than it was when everything closed down. So.
I was going to say that. I was like, have you learned that your conditioning is kind of, I mean, we always have room for improvement, right? But you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Very cool.
So I'm sure this topic is going to be something we circle back around to a lot, because it is actually something that is really interesting. But this is a pressing question that came from your former squire, Sir Eva. She said, how much has Star Wars affected your journey as a knight?
Oh, huge. Absolutely. huge. The thing is if you really boil everything down, when it comes down to it, I just want to be a Jedi. That's really what I want. And so, it occurred to me one day, I'm like, I've been doing this Buddhism thing for about 20 years. So I do actually sit and meditate every day, and I practice swords every day. And now I'm teaching them. I'm probably as close as I'm going to get. So that's not bad, but it absolutely, my childhood was pretty rough, and there were not much in the way of positive, particularly male role models. So I often found inspiration in the Mr. Miyagi's and the Obi-Wan Kenobis. They gave me things to aspire to. So absolutely the ideals of Jedi-ness, totally.
Jedi way.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I wanted to be Luke Skywalker. As I get older, I realize I might have to be Obi-Wan Kenobi. As long as I'm not Mace Windu, I'm pretty happy. That's how
Mace Windu was always yelling, always angry. And you're like, how is this guy a Jedi?
I just grew up wanting to be Princess Leia. That was really she was fabulous. And she was a badass. Like, you could have the best of both worlds. I was going to say, Seto, do you have anything to add to that question? Because I think we can all kind of. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. And I think that's the coolest thing. And I, once again, look to you, Mark, and I'm just like, that's amazing. The meditation on a regular basis. I started doing it and I get in and out of it. And it's something that doesn't take a lot to do. All you have to do is 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You don't have to do the whole 30 minutes a day. And it's really cool to think that cool and calm of mind. And once again, we fight a lot. So you think about this whenever you're fighting, and you're like, now I could Jedi mind trick and make this person think that I'm doing this way, or just being calm.
If
So
you've
I
ever,
don't
if
know.
you've ever watched Mark fight, you would know that he is the king of Jedi mind tricks during fighting.
Oh, I've done a little research now because I was like, I need to know. We only got to talk about in fealty. I'm like, I need to find out more about him. And I'm like, he might just very well be a Jedi. Who knows?
He kind of.
The thing is particularly before I started studying at the monastery, the closest thing I had experienced before I was sitting regularly was fighting, was martial arts. You know, you have those moments, you call it flow state or dropping into the zone, but there are those moments where, you know, there is no opponent, there is no you, there is no fight. There's just this moment and you exhale and that pulls you through and then the fight is over. And that those moments are what I look for nowadays in fighting. That's good fighting to me. And so it's not even about tricking the opponent anymore. It's having those flow moments when you're like, that was a Jedi moment. That felt like that was some Jedi stuff right there.
You just did. And someone's like, whoa, you did this back snap, something like, cool, I was just doing. And
you can always look up fight videos on YouTube, and I encourage anyone who's actually, you know, interested in fighting. I don't fight. I'm just an armchair, you know, like it's my armchair sport that I like to watch. I have no desire to participate in. But one of the things that I do enjoy is pulling up videos of my friends who, you know, their videos are online of just various fights and tournaments and anything. And there's a bunch for Mark, so you could all look it up if you want to see this man literally deliver some amazing sword work. Yeah, I don't.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, and I'll say a caveat to that too is true fighting at certain levels. Not saying I'm not even at true fighting that, but watching people fight when it's a dance, it's an art. It's more than just people hitting each other with a stick. It's really, really cool, and you're just like, oh wow, you see this give and take. Yeah, and it's just interesting
to watch two really good fighters, like who, you know, skilled fighters fight one another. It is actually a really wonderful, joyful experience as a viewer. I'm sure it's, you know, it feels great, like, you know, you're doing this dance or something. It's the kind of what I imagine it to be like, but kind of more violent. Yeah. But it looks really satisfying, like the two fighters being very like, you know, they both are responding to one another, and there's a flow, there's a conversation happening that is, you know, not language based, and I think it's wonderful. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I do talk about fighting as kind of my quote unquote sport. It's the sport that the only sport other than like gymnastics that I ever gave a crap about. But, you know, so yeah, anytime you ever want to talk fighting, go ahead and talk around me. I don't care. I'm not bored. I'm fascinated.
And people are saying, "Oh, go ahead, Mark."
Myself most of the time, so that's great.
Yeah, I know. Like, God, listening to you and Thorfinn go just la 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 la. I mean, you better like fighting because you're gonna just listen to a lot of that talk.
So people are asking though, before we get to other questions, what color lightsaber, Mark? What color lightsaber? Green. Oh, okay.
Have you? I'm not spoiling. Have you watched the most recent episode of The Mandalorian yet?
Very much so. Oh yes.
Yeah.
I haven't yet. Oh, I need to see it.
This was me the entire time.
This is my face because I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but you must watch it. It is a must watch.
I'll get caught up and I'll message you.
Okay.
Sarah, what about your color, Sarah? What about you?
Oh, mine is. It's gonna be blue. It's a nice bright light blue. Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Blue's
I don't know. I like being different, so I want to do like an orange or maybe a yellow, something like that. So
yeah, nice gold. Yeah. That could be really striking. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, should we move to the?
Sure.
All right, so this is one of the questions that all of us can answer, even though we kind of talked about the last one a little, but
that's all right. Star Wars, you can't not talk.
No,
so I'm gonna be selfish, and this is a question that I had for you, Mark. What's one of your bucket list items that you want to accomplish in the next, let's say, 5 years, or as soon as possible?
So in the SCA, I want to go fight at Raglan Festival because the idea of putting on my armor and getting to fight in a castle, the stories I've heard are amazing. We got to fight in London one time. We were there on vacation and we dropped by a practice and got to fight. And they told us these amazing stories of Raglan. And we've gotten to do Rohini Festival in Australia, and that was amazing. So that one we got to check off. But I definitely want to go fight in a castle in my armor for sure. That
would be amazing.
So now we have actually in the background here, you guys can't see it, but we can. Carius has brought out his lightsaber. Again, out on Wednesday. And no, that's not a euphemism. Get your filthy.
And I said a mundane name, so drink some more of your beverage. Good catch out there, David. But Sarah, what? Oh my gosh, there we go again. Sassy Seamstress, what would you have for your bucket list?
My bucket list. I've been fortunate to have done so many wonderful things in my 42 years on this planet. That, you know, and I kind of think about this to myself, you know, if I were to get hit by a truck or something tomorrow, I could check off things like I danced in the halls of Versailles, in the Hall of Mirrors, in full 18th century costume, not once, but twice. You know, I've done some cool shit. And, but if there's something that I could add to that experience of some cool things that I want to do, I would love to go make it to kind of all the wars that you want to go to. I want to do that. I want to try to do like all the West Coast wars, of course. Those are wars that are relatively easy, and we already go to those anyway. Estrella, Great Western, and West Ontier. And then I've never been to Gulf Wars. I've never been to Pennsic. I've never been to Lily's. You know, like there's all of these things that I'm like, I want to go there. I want to go there. I want to go there. And I would love to go to Double Wars, to get to go to Drachenwald and go to Double Wars. I would love to go to Rowaney Festival in Lockhawk. That's been on my bucket list for pretty much since I found out what Rowaney Festival was. You know, when I first started learning about the SCA and all the other kingdoms and all the other cool events that people were going to and doing around the world. So I think for me, it now is very SCA focused, but I would love to just make it to these big interkingdom events and meet more people and shop. I want to shop all the places. But yeah, to do a war tour, I think that's my answer.
That's very cool. Both those are really cool. I mean, one fighting in a real castle, I think, would be great.
Yeah, that would be so
yeah. And then more wars, just great. But my bucket list item, and I really am making steps to actually make this happen, is something I always wanted to do since I was like maybe 13, 14. I want to go to a Shaolin monastery or a Shaolin temple, and I want to stay there and train for anywhere from 6 months to a year. And I've been looking through, and they have the ones like the tourists can go to. Granted, I want more of the kind of nitty-gritty kind, but I want to do that, and I'm slowly taking steps to do that. And I want to come back in the SCA later. Like, I'm going to take notes, going to do all those things every time I go to bed, wake up and focus, but write a journal, and then have a class about it for the SCA and be like, this was my experience at a Shaolin temple.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, please.
So I thought it was SCA specific. Interestingly enough, generally the one bucket list thing I still have, and it's something I'm working through with my teacher because of logistics, but I actually do want to ordain as a Zen priest.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
And so one of the struggles that we're going through is generally you have to do monastic training to be ordained. And I'm not willing to leave my wife and not talk to her for 1 to 3 months.
Yeah.
And so talking about how to honor my marriage and my commitments and still get the standard of training and is a kind of an ongoing conversation that I think
very much so.
That's really the last thing, because I had a near-death experience a few years ago, and I had that realization that, I've been fortunate enough to experience and accomplish more than I ever thought I would have growing up. So it's all bonus time. But the ordination would be one thing.
That would be really cool. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have like my highest aspiration, I think, that was outside of the SCA. I also achieved that, and that was getting my master's degree. And that was quite an ordeal. That was a 7-year ordeal. But I came through the other side with a ton of student loan debt and a master's degree. And of course, it's like getting your peerage. That and $4 at Starbucks will get you a coffee. But it was a personal day. It was very much a personal achievement because, my mother had, my father only had a high school. And actually, I think both my mother and father, they had associate's degrees. They'd managed to pull themselves through 2 years of community college. And so they were bound and determined that my sister and I were going to go to 4-year colleges. And then I had it hammered in especially hard by my mother to don't just settle for your bachelor's, get your master's. And at that time in my family, not, you know, even having a bachelor's degree was not really that common. So yeah, and it's funny because it's a completely different landscape now with what a bachelor degree or a master's degree or a PhD will get you. In terms of like job prospects and stuff. And I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to teach community college level. So I needed a master's degree to do that at minimum. And then I got into academia on the other side of it, and I realized it was just awful. And I was like, I'm not willing to get chewed up and spit out again by the university system. So I went into, accidentally ended up in law, weird, but I love it there. So I don't know. That's a really interesting question, because I'm also somebody who very much doesn't really plan things that deeply. I'm kind of a take what comes at you kind of a thing. So
nothing wrong with that. Going through life. It's good.
Anyways, okay, Sarah has managed to ramble, and Sarah has also managed to name drop her name twice now. Okay. Next question. This is from Gwen. What caused you to fall in love with your chosen art, fighting, or service in the SCA? When did you know you were hooked forever? What's going on over there? There's a lot of noise.
Oh.
Mark, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. Do you need me to repeat that?
No, I heard it.
Okay.
Should I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go for it.
Oh. So like I said, I started martial arts at 7 years old. So I grew up really in the dojo. That was what I did after school. And my family opened our own school. So for me growing up, it was school and then straight to the martial arts school for 2 to 3 hours a night, homework in bed. And so when I was I was doing traditional Taekwondo, and then I started doing Western boxing in the midst of that. And then when I got to college, because I'd always loved swords and Jedi and King Arthur and that kind of stuff, I was fencing. And so as soon as I got to swing a sword, I was hooked. There was really never, I didn't know it was an option. And as soon as I got my mitts on one, that was it forever. And so when I came to the SCA, I think the thing that struck me about the SCA is that in traditional martial arts, there can be a lot of bullshit and mysticism, right? And in boxing and in MMA, you have the honesty of, if you can't fight, you don't progress. But there often isn't the personal cultivation. And honestly, there's a lot of shitty people in boxing. And so when I came to the SCA, I saw that there was this chivalric culture where there's this personal cultivation at its best. It raises us up. And there's the honesty of, if you can't fight, you're probably not winning crown or getting knighted and that kind of stuff. And so to have the kind of the best of those two worlds come together with sword, I was done. I was absolutely done. And now the research piece, because there's so much more material available, I can read books and do drills that they did in 1560, 1570, and show those with people and hit people with swords. The way the historical masters told me I was supposed to hit people with swords. It's fighting. It's both inspiring and a little despairing. The pool never ends. No matter how deeply you dive, there never is a bottom. So I am both inspired and sometimes despaired by the fact that I will live and die having never learned everything there is to be learned. But the plus side is that keeps me going, because there's always that next foot of research and knowledge and experience to have. So
I mean, it's
very cool.
Socrates, the way to kind of frame that, because I also used to have that real problem of like, well, I can't know everything, and it really disturbs me. But I found a lot of comfort in the Socratic kind of philosophy of like, you can't know everything, you just can't. You're just this little particle of, nothing that's going around absorbing as much info as you can. And it's a finite amount of time with an infinite amount of information. And you kind of just got to do what you got to do with what you got. I like that. The only true knowledge comes from knowing that one knows nothing. That got me right here when I was like 15. And I was like, yes, I could be stupid. All right. I guess Seto, you're next.
And So did you want to answer the what fell in love wise, or did you?
We all answer that question, and then we move to the next one. So
okay, so I'd say what made me fall in love was once again just being able to go. And first, it was hitting people with sticks because I grew up in martial arts, not as quite at such a young age as yourself, but I was in there since about 13 or 14. And then when I came back after the military, I was like, I'm gonna go do martial arts again, but I don't have the money, so I'm gonna do this because it's free, right? No, but it got me started, and it was so much fun. I came for the fighting and stayed for the people. And it was cool getting to meet people. And I tell people all over the world, I'm like, I know someone almost everywhere, especially in the United States. I could probably go everywhere and be like, hey, can I have a place to crash? And most likely someone will say, hey, Seto's a pretty cool dude. Could you lend him a couch there? And that kind of community and people actually being a part of the community and loving the community is what kept me here and what's going to make me never want to stay, or never want to leave rather.
Like, please stay.
I want to stay. Never want to leave. And now growing up and meeting kids, they start, and they're like growing up and they're like, oh, I remember you this stuff. And they actually see you as role models. I'm like, me as a role model? You need to find other people. But it's really cool to see it. And I want to see that next generation. So.
Yeah, I so I had I wouldn't say I had a easy childhood, but I had a pretty good childhood with a lot of like life crap thrown at me at a very young age. Like my father died suddenly when I was 4 years old, and so I grew up without a dad. But my mom, was a wonderful mother and like was very, very much involved in my sister and I's our lives. And so I had like the best situation that I could have out of a very crappy situation. But one of the things that came along with that was that I, at a very early age, kind of retreated into a fantasy world of my own making, where I found a lot of comfort in the stories, like the fantasy stories, fantasy books. Anne McCaffrey was a big one. Arthurian legends. Anything where it was like this kind of story where the young heroine gets shit thrown at her and yet she perseveres and lives happily ever after, or at least until the next bullshit thing happens and she has to go kick ass. But but they were always kind of framed around these medieval scenarios, with kings and queens and knights and all of that. And I loved the idea of the Renaissance Fair. Got introduced to it at a very young age, like at 12. And I loved that comfort of this setting, this kind of set dressing, that you could go put a costume on, you could become somebody with a definitive story, and you knew what was going to happen on down the line, with this character that you were playing. Or you could make it up as you went along and people would play with you. It was that very kind of role-playing feeling that I really, really liked. And then I found about the SCA a couple of years later, and I think what grabbed me about the SCA the most was that you can come in with all of your weird damage and shit, and you can still kind of find a family. You can find a home there, an acceptance, because of the way that socially the SCA is structured around things like honor and fealty and these quote unquote chivalric values that the SCA version of chivalry, not the real version, which is a shit show. But as I'm learning now that I'm actually reading about it for the first time in my life, oh my God. But yeah, I like that there was sort of this like scripted interaction that you had with people where you could say, I know how to behave in front of this person because I know that I've watched other people behave in this way, and it's an accepted way of doing it. And it's actually just kind of good. It's kind of like a good foundation of morals. Weirdly enough, it fit right in, got me through my crappy teenage years. And the pretty costumes. I mean, like, come on. That was a huge draw, was getting to go and be, dress up like a pretty princess every weekend, to little teenage me. But my art, and that's how my art came into it too. And so that was the draw as well, was that I get to live in this fantasy, not really, but to a certain extent, I get to live in this communal fantasy with other people, and I get to dress in a fancy costume, and I get to make the fancy costume, and I find out that the researching of the fancy costume was super gratifying and really interesting. And then I found out that teaching other people about how to make these fancy costumes was also gratifying. But I think I knew right from the outset that like that was what I wanted to do, and I had a home and a place to do it in the SCA. So
Very cool.
all right.
All right. Next one. So this one's anonymous. What is the single most important or useful thing that you learned about reigning after you reigned?
What was that?
I can do it one more time. Yeah. What is the single most important or useful thing you learned about reigning after you reigned? Like after you reigned, and then like, what did you find out? You're like, oh, I wish I knew that before I reigned.
That is a toughie.
If you want, we can come back to you. We can do the answers, and then we can come back to.
No, I think I got it. I think I think the most important thing I learned, I thought I knew it, and then I really knew it afterwards. Like I didn't understand it really. Was how real the emotional relationships are in the SCA? Because of course we have this fantastic setting, and the ranks are they're bestowed, but the relationships are real. And I have been in a position, Patsy and I, all three of our reigns, we ended up having to banish people over some really serious things, and both the hurt that I saw and the gratitude that I saw and the protectiveness that I felt, like, oh, I was getting ready to throw down and kill some people. Like you don't mess with my populace. And I knew it, but I didn't comprehend it inside until I lived through it. So I think that's the biggest thing, and it's powerful. And I think I became a little bit more understanding of the royals after having done it. How much weight is on there, even if things seemed little, or I didn't understand, or I didn't know all the things going on behind the scenes. I ended up having a lot more faith in the royals because I understood how much effort and thought went into what can seem like even the smallest decisions. So.
Yeah, actually interesting because so I've never reigned. I've never sat on a throne, baronial principality, crown, kingdom. But I've been around a lot of people who have. And one of the things that kind of was a light bulb moment, and it absolutely dovetails with what you just said, Mark, is I had a conversation with Duke Titus of blessed memory a number of years ago. And he and I really didn't know each other. We didn't really run in similar circles at that point, but we got kind of thrust together at a small, it was a small Western showing at an Estrella about 10 years ago. And there was not a very large Western contingent in it. And so it was a pretty intimate little, hangout with just kind of about a dozen other people, essentially. And so Titus was one of the people that was there. And then we had just over dinner one night, we just started talking, and I, again, like had never, he and I were not in the same circles. I was an artsy fartsy, little on the laurel. I think I'd just been laureled at that point. And I'd made a costume for him, but and he had just stepped down as king, actually. So that, for maybe like a year before, I think that was his ducal reign. Anyway, long story short, he made this comment about feeling so responsible for the kingdom. He's like, until you've done it, you don't understand how much you feel responsible for these people, and they become like your children. And then you step down and you still feel that, and it never goes away. And once you've done that, and I think he likened it to, having children, it changes you. And so that actually resonates really closely with something that he said. And something I've seen subsequently with other friends who have reigned. And it does absolutely reassure me that the vast majority of people that sit on that throne are not there just to, be assholes or shit on people or be power trippy. They literally, they care. They may make mistakes in how they, implement some of these laws, or how they rule may put people off. But I really do think that the vast majority of the people that sit on those thrones really, really, really actually care. And I find that hugely reassuring. So, Seto, you can answer the question though. Oh, you're muted.
Having rain. Oh, I pulled Mariah right there. I just wanted to make people feel more like
you
Mariah.
You also said her name.
Oh no. Want people more to feel like Danger Muppet's right there. So through Danger Muppet, I muted myself to make it a little bit more home. It's having rained recently and then ended during COVID, which also I'll drink for this one. Ooh, good thing it's not really a drink this time. It was really hard. People told me that I would really miss it or that there'd be weighing decisions, but I didn't actually know how much weight it would be. And for some things people didn't even know. Being in the Middle Kingdom, when we went for Gulf Wars, that's the Winter King's like reign. We don't have Penzik, so we're not, so it's like Gulf Wars is mine. So everything's getting ready. We were literally about to leave. I have some of my populace already going. And then the government's starting to say like, hey, COVID might be happening, all these things, once more time, the pandemic.
Yeah.
And people were looking to us to say, hey, should we go or should we not go? And that was a real decision where it's a make-believe game. I'm like, I never thought I'd have to be able to say like, hey, yeah, go. You'll probably be fine. Luckily, we timed it out enough to where the government took it out of our hands, so we didn't actually have to say. But we could have told some people go there, and who knows what would happen. So in this make-believe game, there are real-life decisions, not even through just vanishing people. But it's not all doom and gloom. My favorite, like the little caveat, the best thing that no one ever told me about, and I wish they did, was there was this little kid who was 3 years old, and his father retained for me all during Penzik. And I'm just sitting on the throne, trying to look majestic and be like this and gruff. And the kid comes up to me, and he's like, King, the kids won't let me play games with them. And I'm like,
you're like, oh, I got that.
Oh, I got that. I put on my crown, and we went over there, and he just stomped off with me. And I was like, hey guys, could you, he wants to play a game. And all these other kids look at me like, the kid got the king? But I don't know. And they literally listened to me, and they're like, what game do you want to play? And then they started playing, and he like looked back at me. He's like, out of like Mr. T moments where he looks back at me like that, and I'm like, and then he goes and plays games. But not knowing that he would actually interact with kids and things that they'll remember, hopefully, for the rest of their lives. That's something I didn't know, and now I know.
Yeah. Sounds like it would be a lot of fun.
It was interesting.
Yeah. All right. So next question. This is from me. And I would like to know, the non-fighting community supports the fighters in many different ways. What can the fighting community do to support the non-fighting members of the populace in return?
Well, I think there's some pretty standard answers. I think fighters making sure that they autocrat events when they can, work gate when they can, maybe stand court when they can. I think there's a lot of things that fighters, we can get focused, especially if it's a big competitive tournament, and we maybe don't do all the background work that keeps kingdoms running. And so I think we can definitely do that. I also think fighting, a big part of it is and should be the pageantry. So you really should have the best looking kit that you can. You really should have the nicest salutes that you can. You really should do honor to your consort when you can. I always think of my responsibility to my consort like I have a responsibility to Patsy to be the best fighter that I can be, to comport myself as well as I can be, to look as well as I can. And then I've also noticed that it seems like there often feels like there's a wall between the people who fight and the people who don't. And I think fighters generally are the more outgoing of that bunch. And so it's kind of up to us to try to bridge that wall and walk out and go talk to the kids and the people who aren't fighting, things like that. Because it's very easy to get insular with your own community, the people who share your interests and do what you're doing. I've certainly been guilty of it. I can be very focused. So I think for us to just turn around and make sure that we are taking part in the society as a whole is really important. And I don't think it takes that much effort to have a really big impact. So I think if all of us did that a little bit more, I think people would feel it pretty quickly. So
very much so.
Yeah. Seto?
So I like trying to be a jack of all trades. Now I know, of course, being a jack of all trades that makes you a master of none, but I don't think that's quite true. You have to know what you aren't great at, and then sometimes you can decide you're not going to master everything. But I love the arts and sciences. I love dancing. I love cooking. I just try to make more time for it, even though I understand that some of our structure, at least for me, when I was a squire rising up, they're like, you want to be a knight, you better be out there all the time. So you felt you have to. However, I think that changes a little bit. And maybe now I'll have a voice and maybe I can make people listen. But I know for my dependents, a lot of them do Bardic, a lot of them do all these other things. And they look at me and they're like, hey, I didn't want to fight today. I wanted to go do something on this part. I'm like, that's cool. Thanks for letting me know. Then maybe you fight in the next one. But it's that whole go and do other things. Find out what you love. And that's what kept us in the SCA, right? I mean, I want to do blacksmithing stuff one of these days. I don't know what your art is, Mark, but there's so many things to do. So I just think just get out there and do it.
Actually, that's a good question before I answer mine. Mark, you are a Queen's artisan. What is your art?
My art is period fight book research.
Yeah.
So I've actually, awesome. So I've released two written works. One is Heavy Longsword in style of Joachim Meyer, and it's just looking at the longsword section and reorganizing the historical treatise and trying to take pictures and make it very accessible, particularly for heavy fighters. I said I wrote it as a gateway drug. So read my book. Hopefully it'll kind of demystify it and also make you hungry to look at the original sources. And then I wrote a slightly shorter work that was a survey of period sword and buckler for SCA Heavy with an emphasis on Lignitzer's 6 plays. So that's really what I do is I want to bring the historical swordsmanship into SCA Heavy Combat in particular, because when I got started, everybody said, oh, that stuff doesn't work.
Right. I remember that. Yeah, turns out.
And when I released the first written work, I actually, there were some non-heavy fighters, some rapier and cut and thrust fighters who essentially told me it was very cute that a heavy was trying to read books and period fighting stuff. So on the one hand, I want to show that the heavies are not lunkheads. We know how to read and can do some sophisticated stuff. And I want my fellow heavies to realize that if you understand the context and the timing and the soft skills, that a lot of the period stuff does work just fine. So that's kind of my current passion. And the Queen was gracious enough to recognize that what I was doing seemed worthwhile and to foster me a little bit. And I really appreciate that.
Outstanding.
Yeah. So my answer is interestingly enough, that if you look hard enough, and so I know I asked this question in a lot of ways, kind of a loaded question, but if you look hard enough, the heavy fighters are out there supporting the non-fighting community all the time. Just because we have this like focus of, these big tournaments that happen focused on like, determining who's going to get to be the next king and queen or prince and princess, or these big wars where the whole point is, a clash of thousands of people in armor. And these are these big, flashy, spectacular kind of moments of a lot of pageantry and a lot of the event being focused on this. And then the winners being, people that get to be special in some pretty significant way. You gotta look past that though, and you've got to look at the rest of what the SCA does. And I think a really good example for me is we have a tournament. We have an event out here in the West called Arts and Sciences Tournament, and A and S, not anus, which is kind of what it gets condensed into when people are talking really fast. But A and S is this wonderful tournament that happens usually in the summer. And it's a weekend. It's a full weekend of classes. People set up classes or do demonstrations, and there's oftentimes there is a royal presence. There is a court involved in it, and occasionally even a laurel council gets called. Because literally, when else are you going to get all the artists kind of in one place to check out what everybody's doing and the progress they're making and how they're coming along, that we can all discuss it right when it's fresh. And you see so many fighters doing these A&S game or events, collegium, and it's So this kind of has a background too, with me being very deeply involved in the arts community in my kingdom, and there being like this weird us versus them mentality throughout a lot of the arts community or artisans, of thinking that, well, if you're a fighter, then, like Mark said, you're just a lunkhead, you're just a dumb stick jock. You don't do anything for me. You don't even come to my events or whatever. And that's not even true. You look past that, and I can lost count of the number of artisans who are also fighters, the number of laurels who are also knights. Like there isn't this, like, it's not the two diametrically opposed teams in the SCA that some people want to make it sound like. But that said, there have been instances where I have heard fighters say, like, oh, I'm not going to go to that event because it's just arts, they're not going to have any fighting. And you know what, that's fine. Actually, a lot of times people, if they don't really think they're into an art, or they're not really, like, I'm not going to go to an event that I'm not interested in what's going to happen there. Like if it was all about fighting, I probably wouldn't go. I mean, maybe I would just to hang out, but I'm not going to make like this concerted effort, because there's really nothing I can contribute to that, because I'm not a fighter. But same thing can be true said of people who fight who aren't involved in the arts. Maybe that's okay that they don't come. And it's not a slap in the face, because there are so many other people that bridge both of those worlds in that little Venn diagram. So anyways, I think we are at 45 minutes. We're going to do a brief break. I'm going to refresh my coffee, and you guys be back here in about 5 minutes. Okay, cool.
Sounds great.
Rigger Crafts is a husband and wife business that was started when Jackie got out of the Navy. Now, with time to learn a new skill, Jackie took up metalsmithing, combining both historic and modern techniques to create beautiful works of historically inspired wearable art. Soon after, Shane developed Viking Yerrick Beard Care after creating his own all-natural beard care products for himself. All ingredients are organic, and we never use filler oils. They're great for your hair too. You can find them at riggercrafts.com or facebook.com/riggercrafts. That's RIGR Crafts. Rigger Crafts, making beards majestic and Vikings shiny since 2018.
Islamic, Greek, or Italian Renaissance, sculled or Viking kitties. We're devoted to creating unique pieces of historically inspired ceramic art, a touch of the unique you can use all the time. Here's one of our artists working now. Hand-thrown, hand-painted, yet safe for food, dishwasher, microwave, and oven. Rennick Tane, which is Gaelic for start fire in reference to the heat of the kilns, the mother-daughter team with 6 degrees and a myriad of art awards between them, and a healthy amount of humor to bring it all together. Visit our website at rennicktane.com or join us on Facebook. Thanks for watching.
Rigger Crafts is a husband and wife business that was started when Jackie got out of the Navy. Now, with time to learn a new skill, Jackie took up metalsmithing, combining both historic and modern techniques to create beautiful works of historically inspired wearable art. Soon after, Shane developed Viking Yerrick Beard Care after creating his own all-natural beard care products for himself. All ingredients are organic and we never use filler oils. They're great for your hair too. You can find them at rigorcrafts.com or facebook.com/rigorcrafts. That's RIGR Crafts. Rigor Crafts, making beards majestic and Viking shiny since 2018.
Islamic, Greek, or Italian Renaissance, sculled or Viking kitties. We're devoted to creating unique pieces of historically inspired ceramic art, a touch of the unique you can use all the time. Here's one of our artists working now. Hand-thrown, hand-painted, yet safe for food, dishwasher, microwave, and oven. Renegtane, which is Gaelic for start fire in reference to the heat of the kilns. The mother-daughter team with 6 degrees and a myriad of art awards between them. And a healthy amount of humor to bring it all together. Visit our website at renegtane.com or join us on Facebook. Thanks for watching.
Rigor Crafts is a husband and wife business that was started when Jackie got out of the Navy. Now, with time to learn a new skill, Jackie took up metalsmithing, combining both historic and modern techniques to create.
Hey everybody, we're back, and let's keep going. I'm having a great time, and I hope everyone else is as well. So, shall we dive into the next question? Which is yours, Seto.
Excellent. So, how do you like your coffee, Mark? Do you like it black as the depths of your soul, or light as the fluffy first snow of winter, or somewhere in between? This one comes from Sammy.
I'm probably more of a fluffy winter person. I dump a couple Splendas in there and some milk. The only reason I don't use all the flavored creamers is because I'm trying to watch my girlish figure.
Hey, it's important.
So, yeah, but I'm definitely a big coffee fan, and I definitely have to cut it with a little sweetener and milk to make it palatable.
Nothing wrong with that at all.
I am also, man, I like more milk in it than I like sweetener, sugar. So I'm usually a this much milk, and then like a little, like lately I've been using simple syrup because we have a fully stocked bar and I live with a bartender. So simple is simple is really simple. It's easy. And so it's like a few squirts of simple syrup in there, and then mostly if anything, it's milk on the top. Right now I'm actually drinking it a bit darker than I usually do because I just didn't have time to throw more milk in it before I came down. But I'm also not picky about my coffee. Like, I like my coffee as long as it's caffeinated. I will drink espresso drinks. I'll drink it black. I'll drink it, tarted up with all kinds of fancy frou-frou crap. I'll drink diner coffee. I'll drink the hotel coffee that you get in the hotel rooms that you have to brew in like the little plastic thingy. Like, as long as it's caffeinated, I'm good. Not a snob.
Nothing wrong with that at all. So after being a brief barista for like a little bit, no, not really. There's some time back when I was in tech school where they're like, we need someone to run the coffee bar. And I was like, I'll do it. So I got to do the espresso machine. And of course, you want to make sure that their taste right. So you had to try a whole bunch of them. So it was like something out of a sitcom. I'm just trying a whole bunch. And I'm like, okay, I need to take it easy. But really, I'm pretty much more of a, if I'm using it as like a pre-workout or early to get me up in the morning, I'll have it black, like my soul. But otherwise, if it's like a dessert coffee, oh yeah, please, I'd like some coffee with my sugar and milk, please.
I have a funny story about coffee and as a dessert, actually. I was in Italy. This was 15 years ago when my friends took me for a weekend trip. I was doing my internship in London, and you can hop on a plane, and it's a 2-hour plane ride on like Ryanair for 40 euros or something to go to Venice. And I had never been to Venice. And so my friends took me to a weekend in Venice.
Cool.
And one of the things we were doing was a little tour around the islands, and we stopped off on one of the islands, and I forget which one it is, but we're sitting at this cafe, and it's a jillion degrees outside. It's like 100 degrees and 100% humidity. And this little dry desert California flower was dying, like literally wanted to just die. And so I'm just, kind of sprawled out in my chair, and the waiter comes out, and he in perfect English wants to take our order, and I just want a coffee. Like I want a cappuccino, I think is what I asked for. And I think I just said a coffee, actually. And I was like, just bring me a coffee, cafe, please. And he's all, American or Italian? And I'm like, Italian. And he's all, he like literally glared at me, walks away. I'm sure he spit in it, but that was the strongest goddamn cup of coffee I ever had. And I drank every single bit of it. I'm just like, fuck you, asshole waiter. I'm drinking it.
And some of our viewers are saying Death Wish coffee is delightful, which is true. And it's amazing. If you haven't tried it, Death Wish is good.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah, they sell it at
Excellent.
local Safeway. I found it at Safeway now. And I'm like, wow, okay.
Cool.
Alrighty. Next question. This is from Bringerer. I think I pronounced that right. What virtue did you struggle most to understand, and why?
So they're all important. I'll give you two. Franchise I struggled with for a long time because it is kind of poorly defined. And in a way, franchise is all the virtues functioning together. Embodying your station as franchise. So that is one. The other one is actually humility, which is my favorite virtue. I always say that humility keeps all the other virtues from becoming vices.
Yeah.
But humility is not like the bowing and scraping. It's understanding you exist in a context. And I realized a few years ago, I was having this problem where I would get frustrated with other fighters at practice because I felt like they were doing silly things and I didn't understand why. Because the problem I was having is that whatever my knowledge base is, that's baseline average, right? That's normal. So clearly these people are choosing to do things that are frustrating because they know exactly as much as I do. And so they're making choices. And I had to kind of pull up the brakes and realize that I've been doing this for 20 years and I've achieved a certain level of fighting, and expecting everybody to have that same base level of knowledge is actually a failure of my humility because I'm not understanding the context that I'm operating on, that I'm part of the whole. And so I kind of my humility had failed by not understanding where I was existing in the context of the community I was in. So that's I think kind of a constant finding your way in your community. Makes humility can be a very fluid thing. So I struggle with that one sometimes.
How about you, Seto?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I think it was franchise or just largesse more to me, because I like to give things, but it starts to become more of a quality type of what you give. And I didn't want it to ever be like, oh, I just gave you something and that was my franchise. That's what I'm doing for you. But I try to give something that was important to that individual, not something that was important to me, because we all value things differently. So that took me down a whole route to now, not like you're stalking someone, but it's like a Secret Santa. If you're like, I'm going to get something for this person, let me watch and see what they like or enjoy. So you had to learn a little bit more about them, opposed to you just giving something that was worth monetary value or give you something that was rare. Sometimes giving somebody was just like, oh, you got me a cherry flavored snow cone that is my favorite on this hottest day. That is better than any coin, whatever, that means something. So that just made, oh, kitty, drink.
Take a drink.
So that made me think about how can I give largesse in a better way? So that was what I was always thinking about.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say franchise as well, but there's a lot of the virtues, and prowess, mainly. So I think prowess and franchise and go hand in hand with me in terms of how do I apply it as a laurel. How these are kind of easier if you fit within the chivalry concept box, but when you step outside that box, a lot of those virtues just kind of, you're like, they're very esoteric. And the hard part I had with prowess is, yes, I display prowess to achieve to achieve the laurel. You have to, demonstrate a level of prowess, but we're not encouraged the same way as the chivalry or those aspiring to the chivalry to acknowledge our prowess. We're not celebrated for our prowess the way that the chivalry or those aspiring to the chivalry find it. And so that's kind of, I guess, my answer is that it is a slippery little path of how to balance something like prowess without it turning into hubris, or without it being seen as something, tooting my own horn too much, because I've had instances where I'm just making a costume. Like, I'm making a costume and I'm going to wear it to the next event. And I show up at the event and everybody oohs and ahs, which feels great. That is a wonderful thing. It actually feels really gratifying that other people are like awed by my creation. But then after the fact, I've had people kind of tell me, I felt bad because you showed up in a prettier dress than I did, than what I was wearing. And that's where I was like, it wasn't my intention to upstage or to hurt anybody's feelings, or to, make somebody feel bad about their own costume by just simply making something that I have the skills to make. But so that always kind of is this moment of, am I going to upset somebody? Am I going to be seen as upstaging somebody? Is this going to become like some sort of weird competition in someone else's mind when I'm just kind of doing my thing? And yeah, and so I feel like that I overcompensate for those instances where that's happened, because there has been more than one of them, of trying to downplay and trying to dress down. Sometimes I don't wear fancy stuff, and I'll walk out just, in a tunic and my hair down, and that's it, because I don't want someone to think that I'm walking the queen into court and I'm better dressed than the queen, and that's awful, like that. Not that I've ever had any queens that have said that to me, but I've had other queens say, you were better dressed than the queen, and that's a no-no. And I'm like, okay, sorry. So yeah, I struggle with that. I don't have a good answer though.
That actually is something in the fighting community as well. Really? Sometimes people fall into the trap of thinking there's like a limited amount of renown. So if Seto has a great day on the warfield, he took everybody's renown, nobody else gets in. It's not actually how it works.
Yeah.
Or sometimes, there can only be one winner of the tournament. That doesn't mean that there weren't other amazing fighters or people who had amazing fights that day.
Yeah.
But sometimes you see those feelings like, well, there's that concern that like you took that from them.
Yeah.
And I think,
and I do think it's something that the better you get at your thing, the more open to those kind of those feelings that other people have. It becomes more of it gets presented to you as in you took something away from me simply by doing the thing that you're good at, and that's not at all what that's not what I want. I don't want to make somebody sad for any reason. But at the end of the day, it's one of those instances too where you have to just sort of be like, that's your damage coming out right now. That's not about me. That's about you. And you're pinning that on me, but I refuse to participate in that, or I refuse to take ownership of that, because it's something that you could fix. You could practice more. you know, that sorry, like you practice.
No, it's true.
Get better. It works for sewing. It works for fighting. It works for learning to play the piano. Like, you know, these things are, you know, maybe not everybody is going to be a Tulia Alori when it comes to costuming, but most people can get what I do. They can do that. It's a very achievable thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think everybody has to understand that everybody's path is their own. Just because you had an 11 out of 10 outfit doesn't mean somebody else can't have an 11 out of 10 outfit, or that, you know, their take on something wasn't fabulous. Just because one person has a great day on the warfield doesn't mean 10 other people didn't have great days on the warfield. Right. It's not, renown is not a finite resource. Your renown can be if you spend it poorly.
Yeah,
but,
true.
You know, but there's enough glory to go around for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a finite resource, and most people have the skill or have the skill set to improve, you know, whatever they want to improve on. It just takes that mindset of just doing it, just putting your foot on the starting line, as my ex-father-in-law always used to say. That was the hardest part of running a race, was putting your foot on the starting line. And you know, it is, but
true.
I believe in it. Let's go. Let's go.
No, that's good. I love that. It's a nice circular. Like, I believe in everyone. Get out there and do it.
Yeah.
All right.
Be your best self.
So for Rowan, we have, what are some important qualities you look for a crown consort separate from a romantic partner? Like if you were going to fight for a friend, as it were, what's something you think is important?
So I have to be honest with you. I would never fight for a friend. If for some reason Patsy never wanted to be part of the SCA again, that would be the end of my fighting career. That's just how I function. That said, I can tell you the things in Patsy that I value as a consort is that we have a very similar moral compass. That's incredibly important. We both take the job very seriously, and we both come at it from the place of the crown as the first servant of the kingdom. I think that's really important. We both know what the other person needs, so we're good at supporting each other as a team. That is incredibly important. I always feel like when I fight, it is a team sport because Patsy is out there with me. That's incredibly important. Neither one of us has ever made a decision as a royal without talking to the other person about it first. So we're pretty good communicators. We tend to work out pretty well. So I think just in general, you have to feel like you're part of a team. If you don't, you're kind of screwed. You should have similar ideas about what the job means to you and how you want to handle the job. You definitely have to be good communicators. And if there are ever times you have disagreements, you have to be committed to having those disagreements behind closed doors and making sure that you present a unified front, because the kingdom or the principality really needs that out of their royals.
Okay.
That's great.
So I've never reigned, and I've only consorted for one person. I've never fought, so I've never had to have a consort. So I was the consort. But I think Mark actually puts it really succinctly, which is I've been in discussions to consort for other fighters before Thorfinn started fighting for me, and then it didn't pan out for a number of reasons. But in those discussions, one of the things that always came back to was like, does this person and I, or do we both as individuals have kind of an ideological alignment where, like the key things we kind of, there's no argument, no discussion about. It's just, we get that, yeah, that's a thing, or, this is an important value. And so, yeah, never having actually had a consort myself, and also never having reigned, it is kind of more of a nebulous thing for me. But I do say that 100%, like, it's something that if somebody were asking me, who should I consort for? If I had a new fighter or something, or someone come to me and say, I'm looking for a consort, and I would just have to say, like, don't just pick somebody that you like. You don't have to love them. You don't have to be attracted to them. You just pick somebody you like as a person and you get along with. That's really, I think, the number one thing. And then find out if, they can't stand, or say they don't think that just awards should be given for whatever reason, but you do, like that might be a moment where you have to be like, I don't know, like I feel like it's better that more people get recognition, so I'm giving out more AOAs. And if they're like, no, I think AOAs are super 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 special and only super 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 special people should have them, like you're not going to see eye to eye on that. That's going to be a point of contention. So yeah.
No,
Seto, you've done the thing.
I think you both put it in very good ways. And if I was to ever fight for anyone besides my lady wife, which I would possibly think of, but it would have to be someone very, very close to me and a very good friend. But they would have to care. They would have to have good communication. And they'd also have to, like I said, you're a cheerleader for the society and for all of your people. It's not about you. Yes, you're king and queen, you're whatever name you want, put it on Tanis, Tsaritsa, but it's not about you. It's about them. So we'd have to be on the same page there. And like you said, you got to always be able to talk. It's like everyone's your kid, even though they're not their kid. But you're not going to argue right in front on the dais. You're like, let's go have a cordial conversation in our non-yelling room in back, and then let's go talk about this. So those are the main important things to me, other than just a romantic aspect. It's about, do they care about the things I care about? What are their drives for the kingdom and the society as a whole? And can we communicate? And will we have a good time?
Yeah. I also want to add to that is that when Thorfinn started fighting for me, we were not a romantic couple. I had a long-term boyfriend and he had a long-term girlfriend, and we were just buddies. And it was the thing that was like, we got along really, really, really well. So if it ever happened, it would have been a situation where we do have that ideological alignment on a lot of this, a lot of the very important aspects of how the SCA should be played in our humble opinions. That I think that there wouldn't be a lot of clashing. Now, who's to say in practice it could end up being a total shit show? I don't know. I hope not, anyway. All right, next question. So this is mine, right? Luxia asks, what is one thing you hope to see more people doing once we get back to events?
Practicing. Before things started shutting down, practices were more sparsely attended. I came up in the glory days of Mission and Golden Rivers, where you could show up and you'd see 30 fighters and another 30 to 50 people sitting around in chairs, hanging out. Maybe even some baronial meetings. Practices really were kind of the social hubs of the local groups, and I miss those days. I feel like that got a little bit fractured in our kingdom. So I'm hopeful that everybody's enthusiasm for all things SCA, when we're allowed to regather, will lead to some of that coming back. I really miss that. It's not my thing, but I would even be thrilled to see belly dancing at practices again. Just more people coming together would be really awesome.
Remember the Golden Rivers practice? Going to gather, man, every Wednesday. I think at the time I was going, yeah, it was the belly dancers off in one corner. There would be a group of people hanging out in another corner, and the fighters would be over there doing their practice thing, and somebody would be playing music, and there'd be a drum circle. It was a whole thing. It just, everybody in modern clothes sitting at this park in the middle of Sacramento on a Wednesday night, and yeah, that was good times. So Seto.
I think everyone's gonna be so happy, so it's gonna be a lot of either mass hugs or air hugs, and just be like, I'm so happy to see you. Or my friends now, like Mark, I'm like, I want to go visit you guys in your side of the world. I want to go travel and visit more. But I also want people to recruit more. If they enjoy it and they love it, I want them to reach out to other people. Because just like we said at the beginning, for me, the sword in my hand, and for Mark, I didn't know it was an option. So there's sometimes people just looking for that option opposed to just reading about it. Or it might be about dancing. They're like, I want to actually practice these dances that I've read in these manuals. So I think finding other people that want to do this and then have a good time doing it.
I think I'd like to see, and I'm rereading this question. I don't think it's exactly the question that Lux was asking, but
sure.
So what do you hope to see more people doing? I guess it does kind of fit in. My answer would be, I'd like to see more people still continuing to engage online and creating the SCA online as valid as the interactions offline. So I would love to keep seeing all of these classes that are happening, all of this, you know, the interview shows like this one, you know, God forbid we have to keep going on it, but I think we will. I think we will for sure keep going. But I don't want to see all of that stuff just stop because we're suddenly going back to in-person things. And most of all, I really don't want to see the classes go away. I would like to see that become an actual feature of, you know, because, and you look in like academic circles, these online symposiums are becoming more and more of a thing anyway. And so it would be nice to see that continue, that the SCA can adopt that mentality of, if we're having, say, a collegium, that Friday night is for, or Thursday before the event starts, because especially in the West Kingdom, we tend to have the collegiums in hotels or in classrooms over the course of like 1 or 2 days. But have like 1 day ahead of time set aside for these pre-recorded presentations, the way that academic symposia does. So that would be really cool to see continue. And I really hope that that gets kind of worked into our in-person activities. And yeah, that's my answer.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, thanks. Oh. Thanks, Seto.
You're welcome. That's what I'm here, co-host. Both your answers were good. All right. So, Anonymous, what's the difference between your idea of a knight as a child, or has it changed as a knight in the SCA?
Absolutely. So 100%. I would say that my ideal knight when I was a child was the Jedi Knight, Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight, and you know, the boy's own King Arthur, those stories. And so I came into young adulthood in the SCA with the idea that there was a singular, the ideal knight, right? And so we should always strive to be that. And as I got older and as I experienced more knights in the SCA, and then especially after I reigned for the first time, I got to see how there are so many different flavors of knighthood, and they can all be ideal knights, even though they have a kind of different way about them. You know, I like to say that every knight polishes a slightly different facet of chivalry, and so I would say that my view of knighthood got much more nuanced, not any less not any more compromising. I still have very strong opinions on what makes a good knight, but I also got to see that you know, someone like Jeffy Matt, who's an incredibly well-spoken artistic knight, and someone like Uther, who is an incredibly well-spoken smashing machine. Both of them, of course, can fight. Both of them have artistic sides to them, but they are very different types of knights. But they're both incredibly valid and needed by the kingdom. So that's my answer, is that I became more nuanced.
Oh,
very cool.
Let's see. So I don't think I had a really huge emotional attachment to the concept of the knight, say the way, you know, fighters I know have this very visceral, like, oh, the knights of the round table, or the Jedi Knights. Like, this concept of knighthood is kind of this, you know, ultimate achievement and a vaunted position, and this idealistic thing that, you know, they've always aspired to. For me, it was, you know, and I hate to speak along like gender binary lines, but I never felt drawn to that. And I never felt particularly, I mean, I did feel encouraged to go for it if that was something I wanted, but I just didn't. I'm physically small. I'm a delicate little flower. I don't like getting hit. I played around with boffer weapons enough as a teenager to know that that is just no bueno, not fun. But I would say that my concept has gelled in the SCA. Now my idea of what a knight is are these real people that I interact with on a daily basis, who are flawed, and, you know, they have a whole, you know, lot of BS that they've got to deal with, and yet their behaviors are affected by the values that we've created in the SCA. And I think it makes them kind of better as everyday people, theoretically, the ones I know. If I don't really include you in that, it's probably because you're a terrible person and you don't really count in my brain. If I'm talking about glowing reviews about the knights that I know, it's, you know, people I know, like you two, like my boyfriend, like, you know, Danger Muppet, you know, like these are people that I think you guys, you know, you're not perfect in any way. But you guys are doing the best you can, and you're striving to be good people and to be good to the society. And so I think that yeah, it's sort of a non-answer, but at the same time, like the way we construct our ideas about how values and virtues in the SCA, and then how we want our knights to embody those, I think does put a lot more people in a better moral position than not.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, that's really cool. And I mean, I knew of Arthurian legends. I think about the old Sword in the Stone movie with Merlin and that part, but I didn't think about him as being Arthur and what growing up to. I got more interested in knights as I grew older in my teenage years. And I think as I saw it, even though I was drawn more towards the Eastern side, samurai and all these other things here, I now look at it as a nerd, as trying to be like, we're all learning as we go along. And we're all, let's say, mutants, because in the regular world, people are like, why do you want to do this medieval stuff? So now I'm kind of like a misfit. Now I want to be a part of the X-Men. So I'm like, I want to be chosen and be on this team. Now, what kind of knight am I going to be on this X-Men team? Am I going to be the leader, Cyclops, that's always like doing stuff? Or am I going to be Wolverine saying, I go where I want to go, bub, and just like tearing up stuff? But I just wanted to be a part of it. But yet I don't want to be exclusive. I don't want to be like, you can't be a part of this. However, there are standards that you have to be in order to get into it. So as I learn, it's trying to be that good old boy or girl. You're trying to help things and help people along the path. And that's what I saw knighthood be. And it's not about the mid-realm knights. It's about Western knights. It's about the knights of the society. And that's when I was like, this is really cool. And I'm glad to be a part of it. And now people that want to be a part of it, I try to help them get in there for what you can do. Or it's all about, you do things that are knightly, and one day you'll be seen as a knight or a master or a knight. And that's what it is. So that's a roundabout way to get to the answer.
Well, that was our last scheduled question. We have a couple of questions that have come in the chat. I highlighted two that I think would be fun to ask. So Seto, how do you feel about if I pick one and you do the other?
Go for it. Sounds
okay.
Great.
And yeah, we're on track to actually end on time, which is actually crazy.
Ooh.
See what happens when, I guess, you know, the ADHD girl has caffeine. It gets me focused, not all over the map. So this is from Michael Arkerl. Do you identify more strongly with your belt or your coronet? Does the answer vary between your persona and your mundane self?
That's an easy one. Knighthood to me is the most important thing. Being a Duke is great, and I'm pleased to have won those tournaments and had those experiences. But being a counter Duke means that I won a tournament and I didn't mess up a reign so badly the bod took it away from me. Being a knight means that my peers and my crown recognize me as worthy, and the crown chose to elevate me. And so for me, that is 1,000 times more important. That's why when people ask what I go by, because in the West, we don't tend to title stack. I go with Sir because it's more important to me. And coming up, my ideal was always to be a knight and serve the king. It was never about being king. Like I was, even coming into the SCA, I wanted to be a knight so bad. I saw the knights and I wanted to be a member of the chivalry. Kingship was never really anything I aspired to. So it's 100% the knighthood. Absolutely.
Yeah. Does it change versus your mundane world versus your SCA world, or is it just something that is all kind of wrapped into the mark in both worlds?
No, it's definitely all wrapped up into one. I sometimes tell, especially my students, but I say in a lot of ways the SCA is like a training ground for moral development, because a lot of times as a squire and then a knight, you're given these sometimes much more black and white scenarios you have to deal with. And so you get to decide what kind of man or woman you want to be, what kind of person you want to be making these decisions, and what kind of peer you want to be. If you happen to be a royal, what kind of royal you want to be. And then hopefully that takes you out into the real world. And the most telling thing I can tell you is that, a few years ago, I jumped into the ocean to save someone who fell off a cliff. And in that moment, I really did look around and go, well, this is what knights do. That was the thought that came into my head. This is what knights do. And so there's no, for me, I am the same person all the time. And I'm lucky enough that my SEA experience has helped me become a better man all the time.
Seto, what about you?
To me, it was knighthood is more important. However, being a count was it was a goal I aspired to do, and I wanted to accomplish that goal. And I'm not necessarily hunting to be a duke that wise, because once Count Chocula or Count Seto just sounds cool, so I'm happy where I'm at. I don't have to be a duke, like, oh, I'm not thinking I'm a duke. But I like being a knight. And to me, Seto is who Spencer wants to be. And now more Spencer is becoming what Seto is, or at least in some people's eyes. And it has helped me do these things. From being a king, and then now you're not just, well, yeah, you won that tournament for hitting someone with a stick better that day or what it may be, but you now become in charge of this thing. So now you become like a CEO of a non-for-profit, and you have to do these things and help. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this will help me for when I want to do a business one day, or networking, or learning things. Or in the mid-realm, we love our army structure because Pennsic War is awesome. So becoming a general and learning these things, it was things that I wanted to do. But being a knight to me was much more important. So I knew I could prove it to myself and do it. And like His Grace said, people saw that in me, at least said, hey, he didn't mess up too bad. Let's let him in. That's great. That's cool. And it takes the right king and queen to do that. Count Cadigan and Count Anne Marie, I love them. They'll forever be my forever queens. But for them to see me and be like, he'd always be like, you're my samurai, go out there and get them. And then they knighted me at the end. I was just like, thank you.
Yeah.
So being
That's
nice with
cool.
something.
Yeah. So for me, I don't wear a belt. I wear leaves. Again, it's kind of a different thing. But it definitely the aspect of what it means to be a peerage and to carry that. There's no difference between how I want to comport myself as a human being outside of the SCA versus one in the SCA. And I have a coronet, but I didn't win it, in a tournament. It was awarded to me, and so are my leaves. So is my laurel. And in both cases, I think more so my laurel, because the peerage is something that I feel is kind of visceral. The baronial coronet is more of an atta girl, go you. And that was wonderful, actually. And I get to wear a fun little, coronet and feel all special. But that's something I identify with at all. I don't ask to be called a baroness. And as if you're gonna call me anything, I prefer Magnifica, because that sounds amazing, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
It's an alternate title, Magnifica, Magnifica Tulia, or Magistra. But it's not even that. I don't need that gratification from someone else. I know, just by dint of taking that oath of fealty and accepting the peerage when it was offered, that I have leveled up, and it's a lot of burden, but it's an incredible privilege. So yeah.
Very cool.
So I'm getting some questions here, actually. Someone keeps asking, do you wear the leaves? Do you wear your belt during the week, embodying the aspects of a peerage in your mundane life? Yeah, fuck yeah, I do. I don't wear my leaves, but I mentally wear that stuff in my head. That is a thing that I don't just go, yeah, oh, well, done with that. Now I can be a dick. I don't do that in the real world. In the real world, I still think to myself, am I treating this person with courtesy? Am I treating this person with respect? Am I encouraging other people to better themselves through learning, or through their art, or all of those things come into play with who I am fundamentally inside the SCA and outside the SCA. It's not about a physical thing I put on my body. It's about what's in here and in here. So
yeah.
A bit of a soapbox. I was a bit of a soapbox. I guess we haven't had a soapbox, so there's a little one. We'll call that a soapbox.
It was a good soapbox. Good soapbox. Well, we have a question from Logan. If you could take part in one historical and one fictional battle, what would it be? Yeah, I know, right?
I'm going to punt this one entirely. I'm just going to let you guys answer.
Okay, we'll keep it short.
Well, I want to preface by saying I am, of course, I'm a gentle flower and would not ever actually want to kill people. But if I was going to take part, I'm actually going to say a historical tournament, a deed of arms, because those were pretty intense. And anything William the Marshal was in, I want to be there, and I want, even if he knocked me off my horse on the first shot, I just want to be there and be part of it. And that I got to cross swords with one of the greatest knights in history. So that's my period one. And I'm gonna say, fictionally, I would have loved to stand with the 7 samurai against the bandits in Kurosawa's film. That would have been amazing.
That's a good one.
Right. So those are my 2 answers.
Very good. Okay. So us knowing in Penzik, other things, any melee battle, chaos, it's chaos. So a real battle to be like, now you're in this, sounds horrifying. And with my luck, I'd be like, I'm in Sakigahara and let's go. And then arrow, and you're like, and that was my story. So I think like you, I would love to be in the duel versus Musashi, where he came out to the island and fought Sujiro and made him tired, made him angry, and got there late. And then they had a fight. And it'd be cool to fight this person and be like, I wonder if I had what it takes. Granted, I'm a 6'4" giant, and he might be like, I'm not going to fight you. But I doubt that. It's Musashi. He's going to fight you. So to be cut down or not, that would be really cool.
He would just make a longer oar.
Exactly. Or just see and be like, I changed my mind. But no, that wouldn't be it. That'd not be honorable. You're going to fight. You're going to figure out. And then fictional. Oh, boy. Okay. Let's just go there. I'm going to go Lord of the Rings wise, and I'm going to make myself one of the cool people, and I'm going to stay right between Gimli and Legolas and hopefully not get hit by that arrow, and I'm going to be fighting in Helm's Deep and start counting. And they'll be like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and you're like, 1, I got 1 on the board. Cool. So that would be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool.
I'm watching the comments going, and I know any second now I'm going to get one from Thorfinn who's going to be like, yeah, Lord of the Rings. He actually set up ahead his earlier his 2 battles. The historical one I'm going to answer for him because I don't have.
Go for
it. Is Battle of Hastings. He said he wanted to be in that, and then Ride of the Rohirrim. So it's his fictional one. All right.
Awesome.
All right. So
closing
remarks. Yeah, we did a good job, guys. Go us.
Woohoo! So now, if there's any other questions, or does anyone have anything else they want to say before we wrap up? Did you have anything you want to say, Mark?
Just, thanks for having me. I was a little nervous, but I had a really good time, and you guys were super gracious hosts, and I think made me sound pretty good, so I appreciate that.
I had no worries. I had no worries whatsoever about you. I was like, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. Whatever happens, it's going to all be interesting. So.
Any other shameless plugs too? I forgot, like, you have a show. Go ahead and tell those viewers.
Yeah, so I am doing Backyard Basics is the YouTube channel. And what started out as a small thing for a few students has turned into a weekly thing. Right now, we're going through all of the historical players from Meyer's 1570 book for longsword, but there's also general SEA and HEMA videos and a beginner series. And if you have questions, I'm happy to do a video on it because I don't want to run out of material before the quarantine ends. So please feel free to watch and let me know if you have any questions. And
outstanding. Very cool. And I'm going to do a shameless plug for my YouTube channel. We have something called the Wandering Sword Project, where me and 2 of my other friends, we do all medieval stuff, but also nerdy things. So check it up on YouTube, the Wandering Sword Project. We just had a video about our boar hunt that I did with Duke Kellick and Her Grace Vukasin, where we actually went and fought a boar. Now, for the squeamish of heart, we don't show anything super scary, but we talk about what happens during that chivalry, or not such chivalric, but it's a medieval event, right? We actually went out there with spears and we hunted boar. And there's other things where we talk about things as well. Do you have something, Sassy Seamstress?
I do. It's not something that's happening yet, or it hasn't happened yet. It's coming up in about a month and a half. And it's called Service Symposium 2021. It's scheduled online virtual symposium for February 13th, 2021. And that's a Saturday. And they've got like 30 people that are going to be giving these talks and discussions about service in the SCA and also ESCA, I believe, as well. And if you want more information, you look them up, Service Symposium 2021 on Facebook. If you just type that into the Facebook bar, search bar, it should come up, and you'll get all of the information. Follow them for any updates, and it's going to be a really interesting kind of way to understand how service in the SCA works. So also newcomers, if you're someone who's never really interacted with the real world SCA version of the SCA, only the online version, and you're like, what is service? That is a great place to start. So mark your calendars, February 13th, Service Symposium.
Excellent. And then don't forget about your commercial updates, SCA merchants. You have anything to add or a commercial in between two peers, please contact one of us, or also any of our contacts, we'll have them in down below. And any details that if you want, so we can pimp out you on the show. So it's a good time.
Yeah, so merchants, do get us your stuff. So please note, we are taking Christmas off next week. There will be no show on next Friday, December 25th. That said, we have over 40 episodes on YouTube, so you can binge watch to your heart's content while you're wrapping presents or unwrapping presents or drinking too much eggnog and stuffing your face with, ham or whatever. So whatever it is people eat on Christmas. So our next show is going to be January 1st, 2021. So we're going to see you in the new year. Our special guest is Sir Fergus McGarrett, which should be a complete and total riot of a show. Definitely tune in. That one's going to be probably run a little long because Fergus likes to tell stories. We're really excited to have him on, though. He's a great guy and just a load of fun. So as always, like and follow us on Facebook at Between Two Peers to catch all of our updates, information about upcoming contests, general shenaniganry, and other fun stuff during the week. Your enthusiasm for the show means we are doing something right. And I want to say thank you again to Mark. Thank you for joining us tonight. And thank you to Seto for jumping into the hot seat at the last minute. We really appreciate it. You both did great. Would love to both have you back on some other time. So put that away if you feel like, put a pin in that. And of course, thank you to all of you for watching us and continuing to tune in and support the show. Have a happy holiday. Have a great new year. We'll see you on the 1st.
Take care of yourselves.
Bye.